So here we go again, y'all. It's 2020. Can you please get over the election results from 1860? Abraham Lincoln won. Can we please stop? Here we are. The Confederate flag is now controversial again. Now, for long-term viewing on this video, if you watch this video a year from now, we're a couple of weeks past some major things in race relations, the killing of George Floyd, and the resurgence of outrage over Breonna Taylor, and Black Lives Matter protests and backlash, and the president tear gassing peaceful protesters so he could have a photo op. And NASCAR driver Bubba Wallace putting Black Lives Matter on his car and then saying that it would be good for NASCAR to ban the Confederate flag at the races, and NASCAR did it. And now there's a reaction. Gonna put a couple of pictures up. This is from a neighboring county to where I live. I don't live in Parker County, but I'm close to it. Took these off of a friend's Facebook page. I blurred out the faces. You can see these are guys who are protesting with their Confederate flags, standing in front of the monument to a Confederate soldier, carrying their assault rifles in case somebody tries to put graffiti or vandalize or otherwise desecrate that Confederate monument. They've got their assault rifles ready. They've got pistols on their hips. They're ready to shoot to kill anybody who tries to desecrate that monument. And if you look there in the corner, I'm going to zoom in. There it is. All lives matter. I already did a rant on that, but that kind of underscores it. Here's the deal, guys. If you're saying that that flag represents your heritage, then pick the right flag. That flag is not the flag of the nation of the Confederate States of America. The first flag of the Confederate States of America, national flag, looked like this. In 1863, they made one that looks like this. This thing that you picked because it represents your heritage, because you liked it on the roof of the General Lee and Dukes of Hazzard, it was originally the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia. Now you can see that flag is square. Tennessee's Army elongated it, made it a rectangle, but really the flag that you're flying is the Naval Jack. It flew on Navy ships. So if you're flying that, that means that you're proud of your heritage of being on a Navy ship serving for a country that only existed for 4 to 5 years, depending on when you calculate your state's secession. Guys, ALF lasted longer than that. Where's your ALF flag? The realistic way of looking at it is, let's look at the history of what that specific flag is. See, because after the Confederacy, it wasn't flying around. It didn't really make a resurgence until the early 20th century, in the 19-teens, when there was a movement called the Lost Cause of the Confederacy, or just the Lost Cause. And we still use the term Lost Cause to mean a lot of things, but not specifically to the Confederacy anymore. And they bemoan the fact that the Confederacy and the South's role in the Civil War was misrepresented, and the Lost Causes, it was all about states' rights, and it was all about preserving our Southern heritage, and it was all about the ending Northern aggression. And all of that is complete BS, y'all. That is the first case of revisionist history related to the Civil War. The Civil War and the South's secession and the forming of the Confederate States of America was about slavery. Period. Look at the documents that are the declarations of secession from these southern states. In the vast majority of them, slavery is mentioned in the first paragraph, but it is mentioned everywhere. If you're saying that that was the war for states' rights, finish the sentence. It was the war for the states to have the rights to have slaves. If you're saying it's about protecting your Southern heritage, It's about protecting your heritage to own slaves. If you say that it is about northern aggression, you're forgetting that the South fired the first shot. The Civil War started when the Confederate Army fired at Union soldiers in Fort Sumter off of Charleston, South Carolina, which was a U.S. Army fort before the secession. It's their fort. Why are they going to leave it? But it was about slavery. That's all it was. Now, it was such a symbol of slavery that it began to make another resurgence. So let's go back to the 19-teens. In 1915, there's this movie called Birth of a Nation. At the time, longest movie ever made. And the heroic force in Birth of a Nation is the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. Also, this is going to bracket pretty well right around all the Jim Crow era stuff. And that other black eye on our history brackets pretty well about that. Then it kind of faded away. And some southern regiments in the United States Army, etc., used these rebel flags to identify their platoons and their units in World War II. But where it really became back into prominence was at the push of Strom Thurmond. Now, I'm going to go off on a tangent here. Strom Thurmond was a Democrat. Technically, he was a Dixiecrat. If you look at the Dixiecrats, they became Republicans shortly after the Civil Rights Act. But even if they didn't change parties, they always acted like they were. And the Democratic Party is not the Dixiecrat Party. At least it's not anymore. And you're going to, well, Republicans ended slavery. Lincoln ended slavery. Yeah. And then they completely changed course. And it happened in the 1960s. It happened 100 years later. The parties completely switched sides as far as race relations. And I want to just go back on the what have you done for me lately stuff. The Republicans do not represent ending slavery now. They're pretty much all for it. It's now slavery in prisons, and now they want them to be private-owned prisons. Okay, back off of the tangent. So after the war, Strom Thurmond starts pushing this flag up, and a bunch of his other Dixiecrats, and then it became a huge movement to end, to stop civil rights legislation. Because all of the protests and marches and lynchings going on in the 1950s and the Mississippi burning stuff and all of that, it was to show dominance and assert intimidation on black people in the South. So they would fly this Confederate flag, and it was this flag, the Navy flag. So since the Civil War, that flag has been used in connection with racist ideologies. It is an overtly racist symbol that if you don't pay attention to that history, you ignore that history, and you're doing it because you liked it on the roof of the General Lee or it looks good on your cigarette lighter, it's an overtly racist symbol. Dale Earnhardt Sr. had that flag on a bumper sticker on the back of his bumper, and when a maid that worked for him told his son, Dale Earnhardt Jr., that flag hurt her because of what it represented, Dale Earnhardt Sr., the redneck patron saint, goes out to his bumper with a razor blade and cuts the flag off of the bumper sticker, leaving the words that were with it, the caption of American by birth and Southern by the grace of God. Then we got the statues. Since when does the losing army get statues in the nation where the war was fought? Since when do traitors who took up arms against their country get statues? Since the Lost Cause era started, to whitewash to whitewash the history of the Confederate States. Is that flag part of our history? Yeah. Put it in a museum where parts of our history belong. Get it out of people's faces. Do those statues to Confederate soldiers and generals, are they part of history? Sure. Make a museum out of them. There's a museum about 6 miles north of where I am now, the Texas Civil War Museum, and they've got the whole thing laid out with two-sided walkways. One side of the walkway is Confederate, one side of the walkway is Union. That's the way to do it. But we don't need to be getting butthurt over NASCAR saying you can't display the country's most famous participation trophy, which I thought you guys were against anyway. And besides, NASCAR will always fly the Confederate flag, the real Confederate flag, when there's one lap to go in the race. All right, that's it for this one. I'll catch you next time.